Welcome to this deep dive, brought to you by Safety One Source. Today, we're going to dig into something absolutely fundamental for workplace safety, especially if you're involved in construction or underground work.
That's right. We're talking about illumination, lighting.
Exactly. How bright things need to be.
Yeah.
This is really geared towards safety professionals, risk managers, anyone out there focused on making sure work areas are properly lit and safe.
It seems simple, but the details really matter.
They really do. So our mission today is to unpack the minimum illumination requirements based on some key sources. We've got OSHA regs, specifically 29 CFR 1926.56a and Table D3.
And there's also a pretty helpful OSHA memo that clarifies some things, especially around tunnel lighting.
Right. We want to get clear on what's actually required in different spots on a job site. So where do we start? General construction area.
Yeah, that's the logical place. So that OSHA table, Table D3, it sets a baseline. For just general construction areas, the minimum is 5-foot candles.
Okay, 5-foot candles, that's sort of the main number for generally active zones. But interestingly, the same table then calls out some specific types of areas, also construction areas, that actually need less light.
It does, yeah. It specifies a minimum of 3-foot candles for certain locations. And this is where safety folks really need to pay attention.
Because it seems counterintuitive, maybe?
A little. It lists general construction areas again, but these are likely areas with less demanding visual tasks compared to the 5-foot candle ones. But it also includes things like concrete placement, excavation and waste areas, access ways, active storage, loading platforms, even refueling, and field maintenance spots.
So it's really about the type of activity happening in that specific general area. Not all general areas are equal.
Precisely. The visual demands dictate the required light level.
Got it. Okay, what about moving indoors? Say, temporary site offices, warehouses, corridors?
Right. When you move inside, Table D3 generally bumps it back up to 5-foot candles. It specifically lists warehouses, corridors, hallways.
An exit way.
And definitely exit ways. You absolutely need clear visibility there for safe movement, preventing trips, and of course, emergency egress.
Makes perfect sense. Clear paths are critical. Now, let's shift to probably the trickiest environments. Tunnels, shafts, general underground work. What are we looking at there?
Okay, so underground, the general minimum is also 5-foot candles, similar to those indoor spaces.
Right.
But, and this is a big but, right at the tunnel or shaft heading where the actual drilling, knucking, scaling is happening.
The real action zone.
Exactly. There, the requirement doubles. It jumps to 10-foot candles minimum.
Wow, okay. 10-foot candles right at the face. That reflects the hazard level and the need for precision there, I guess.
Absolutely. And the standard even gets specific about lighting, how you light that area.
Oh, yeah. What does it say?
It explicitly mentions that Bureau of Mines approved cap lights are acceptable for workers right there at the heading.
So personal lighting is acknowledged as a key component there.
Yep, often in addition to whatever area lighting is set up.
Okay, so we've gone from general site to specific areas indoors and now deep underground to the work face. What about other support structures, maybe above ground, like batch plants or maintenance shops?
Good question. For those general construction plant and shop areas, the minimum is also 10-foot candles.
Same as the tunnel heading then.
Right, and this covers quite a range. Batch plants, screening plants, mechanical and electrical rooms, carpenter shops, rigging lofts, active storerooms, even mess halls and indoor toilets or workrooms fall under this 10-foot candle requirement.
So generally areas where more detailed work might happen or just busier hubs of activity.
Exactly. Higher potential for interaction, need for better visibility for tasks.
Okay. And then there's one category with an even higher requirement, isn't there, for health and admin type areas?
Yes, a significant jump. For first aid stations, infirmaries, and site offices, the minimum requirement shoots up to 30-foot candles.
30? That's quite bright.
It is. But think about it, administering first aid, reading detailed plans or paperwork in an office. You need really good visual acuity. Poor lighting there could lead to serious errors.
No question. Accuracy is paramount in those spots. Okay, so we've covered a lot of specific locations listed in Table D3, but what if a safety manager encounters a situation or an area that isn't specifically listed there? What's the guidance then?
That's where another part of the standard, 1926.56b, comes in handy. It basically says, for areas or operations not listed here, you should refer to the American National Standard A11.1 1965 R 1970.
Okay, the ANSI standard?
Yeah, the Practice for Industrial Lighting. It's a much broader document with recommendations for all sorts of industrial settings. So if OSHA's table doesn't cover it, ANSI A11.1 is your next stop for recognized practice.
That's good to know. There's a fallback resource. Now let's circle back to those tunnels for a moment. And that 2000 OSHA memo you mentioned, it had some useful interpretations, right? Like what counts as work in progress? Does just traveling through the tunnel count?
Yes, and that's a really important clarification for safety folks. The memo confirms that, yes, work in progress does include workers just traveling through the tunnel to get to or from their actual workstation.
Okay, so even just commuting within the tunnel requires proper lighting.
Exactly. The implication is that the 5-foot candle minimum applies, at least in the vicinity of those traveling employees. That includes the area around them and, importantly, in front of any vehicle they might be using. You need light to travel safely.
That makes total sense from a risk perspective. You're still exposed to hazards even if you're just moving through. Now, the memo also touched on using vehicle headlights, didn't it? Can they satisfy the requirement?
It did. It suggests that vehicle-powered lights might be acceptable for meeting that 5-foot candle minimum, but mainly in areas used just for transport, not active work zones.
Might be acceptable. So there's a catch.
There's definitely a caveat. It really depends on the circumstances. Vehicle lights alone might not provide consistent or widespread enough illumination. Think about shadows, blind spots, the direction the light is pointing.
Right. It needs careful assessment. It might not always be enough.
Not always. And crucially, even if you do use vehicle lights for travel paths, there's another layer of lighting that's non-negotiable for every single person underground.
Ah, the emergency lighting.
Exactly. Section 1926.80004 is crystal clear. Every underground employee must have an acceptable portable hand lamp or cap lamp ready for emergency use.
Or an emergency lighting system could cover it.
Or an emergency lighting system, yes. But the point is, personal backup light is mandatory. It's that essential safety net if the main lights go out.
A critical piece of PPE, essentially. Okay, another practical question that memo addressed was about the power source for the main lighting in active underground areas. Can you use, say, portable diesel generators?
The memo points out that neither the underground standard itself nor the illumination standard explicitly defines how reliable the power source must be. Portable lighting is generally allowed. Well, there are some limitations, like you can't use certain portable lights within 50 feet of an underground heading based on another section, 1926.802.
Okay, so some restrictions. But the memo did stress something about reliability, didn't it? Especially underground.
Very much so. It emphasizes that given the risks down there, the lighting system needs to be reliable enough to prevent foreseeable failures or interruptions.
Foreseeable. So if you know a generator is prone to cutting out,
then you likely need a backup system in place beyond just the individual emergency lamps. It's about risk management. If an interruption is reasonably predictable, you need a plan B for the main lighting.
So again, it comes back to assessing the specific situation and the reliability of your setup. A generator might be okay, but you need to consider if a backup is warranted.
That's the key takeaway. Risk assessment is vital.
And just to tie up the definitions from that memo, how did it define general underground work areas?
It kept it fairly encompassing. It basically includes both the travel routes employees use underground and the actual locations where they're performing their work tasks. Pretty much anywhere a worker is present underground.
Covers all the bases then. You know, it's interesting. These standards we've been dissecting, they have a history, don't they?
They do. It's a small note, but the memo mentions that OSHA adopted these illumination standards back in 1971.
And where did they come from?
They were largely based on the 1968 standards from the Bureau of Reclamation, which was part of the Department of the Interior at the time.
So these levels, these requirements, they've been recognized as important for quite a long time, over 50 years.
Yeah, it shows a long-standing understanding of how crucial lighting is for safety in these environments.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. We've done a pretty thorough deep dive into illumination needs. We hit the different foot candle levels, 5 for general construction and indoor areas, 3 for specific lower demand tasks, 10 for plants, shops, and crucially, tunnel headings, and that high 30 for first aid and offices.
Right. And we clarified those tunnel-specific points from the memo travel counts as work, vehicle lights might work sometimes but need assessment, the absolute need for personal emergency lights, and thinking hard about power source reliability.
and the ANSI standard as a backup for anything not explicitly covered.
Exactly.
So for the safety professionals, the risk managers listening in, the big message here is that getting the lighting right isn't just about checking a box for OSHA.
Not at all. It's fundamental to actually preventing accidents. Good lighting means people can see hazards, perform tasks correctly, move safely. It directly impacts worker safety, well-being, and even productivity.
Couldn't agree more. It's about creating an environment where people can genuinely work safely. So here's something to maybe mull over as you wrap up listening or head back to the site.
Okay.
Given all these specific, sometimes varying illumination requirements across a dynamic construction project, which changes day by day, sometimes hour by hour, how can you, as a safety professional, proactively go beyond just hitting those minimum foot candle numbers? How can you assess and adapt your lighting strategies to truly optimize visibility and safety for every single task in every corner of the site throughout the entire project life cycle?